Welcome to the Art of Badassery, where I explore what it takes to live life on your own terms, break free from the status quo, and unleash your inner badass. Whether you're a rebel at heart or simply seeking inspiration to step outside your comfort zone, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Mahara Wayman, and each week I dive into the stories, insights, and strategies of those who have mastered the art of badassery and are living life to the fullest. They smile when no one is looking. Welcome to the Art of Badassery. I'm your host, Mahara Wayman, and today I am chatting with badass Kimberly Jarman. Kimberly grew up in a small town in Oklahoma where she pursued her dream of becoming a doctor before shifting her focus to counseling. She holds both a bachelor's and a master's degree in counseling. Now back in her home state, Kimberly runs her successful business and enjoys a really beautiful life with her wonderful husband and a lively household of, get this, 4 cats, 2 dogs, and 3 goats. No wonder she's on the show. Welcome, Kimberly. I'm looking forward to our chat today.
Hey, Mahara, I'm so happy to be here.
So, when I put a call out looking for guests for my show, you were one of the first to apply. I got to ask, why are you badass? Let's just get it straight from you.
Let's just go for it, right? Um, why am I badass? I feel like I am resilient as fuck, man.
Okay,
I
that's a
do.
good start. Tell us more.
Uh, it's just like, the human experience. One of my first coaches taught me the human experience is 50-50. It's 50% good and it's 50% shitty. And I feel like my journey has already fulfilled its 50% shitty.
Okay.
Right. It's just like overcoming adversity after overcoming adversity. And a lot of the adversity, realizing now from where I'm at now, is like I created it.
Oh, that's big. Now, I'm not going to let that comment pass without questioning and or asking for some from clarification. First of all, can you share with us one of the examples of drama or challenges, and then explain why you think now that you actually created it?
Okay, let's choose one of them. Okay, like one of the bigger ones is I struggled with depression for a very long time. My first period was when I was 13, and I remember I started dealing with like depression and suicide ideation starting then, right? Um, kind of like just kind of went on with life. A lot of people were like, "Oh, it's just being an angsty teen," and then I get in my 20s and I go to grad school and I start therapy. I go through all these therapists over 10 years. Like I had like six of them. And then we hit 2016, January of 2016. I am 35 years old and I'm spinning in PTSD from all these events, and end up in a psych hospital for suicide. Um, and so I will tell you how I created that because that was the question you asked. I grew up in an environment and a culture and a family system where fixed mindset was taught. It was just, I don't know if you guys have heard about the book by Dr. Carol Dweck, Mindset. So I was taught like Michael Jordan was born special. He was going to go to the NBA no matter what, and that people were just born special, and then there was people that weren't, and I wasn't one of them. I was just average and I wasn't ever gonna, I was just gonna be average, right? And like me feeling average, and I really took on that belief. So I didn't try to be great. I didn't try to like I didn't try to take the AP classes or like go to the big schools. I just thought I was averagely intelligent and I felt invisible a lot. And because of that and that kind of fixed mindset that I wasn't born to be special, and life happened, and fixed mindset really feeds into victim mindset. So I found myself like believing a lot like that I had no control or power over my life, that like God did and other people did. So I surrendered my power a lot and like stayed in this victim mindset and stayed in the fixed mindset, which just created more and more depression for me, right? And more hopelessness for me, which led me to like the thought that was like, nothing's ever going to change. And for me, when that thought comes in, nothing's ever going to change. It's like a direct super highway to suicide ideation. And because I've struggled with that for so long, like, of course I have a plan. Of course I have means, right? Like, of course, like that I was high risk for actually executing it. So I can see very clearly now, like because of my mindset and how I was raised and the paradigms I was raised in, I created that.
First of all, thank you for sharing. And I'm sorry that you had a lifetime of this mindset. Would you mind just quickly explaining the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset? Because many of our listeners, my listeners, may not have read Carol Dweck's book.
Yeah.
So yeah, just brief overview, the difference between the two.
Yeah, a fixed mindset is very, you're either born special, you're not, very black and white thinking. Um, Growth mindset believes that it's acquired skills and it takes reps, right? Like for Michael Jordan to be as good as Michael Jordan was, it's because he put hours of practice in, honing those skills, and that we can become anything we want by putting the reps in, by practicing it, right? Like possibility is limitless versus fixed mindset. The possibilities are very extremely limited to very few.
And this is as good as it gets
It's as good as it gets.
versus, wow, I have the world at my fingertips.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Great explanation. So, how did you go from a fixed mindset, suicide ideations, struggle, drama, one thing after another, to what? There's a different way for me?
Yeah. I remember very clearly, like when I got out of the psych hospital, two things. I got two things from that terrible experience. Um, I wasn't as depressed as I thought I was. And then the second was that no one was coming to save me. No human, no God, no one. If I wanted a different life, it was completely on Kim, and it was up to her to take responsibility for her life and change it. Which was basically essentially me taking back my power. 35 years of feeling powerless and me finally claiming power, like laying claim to my own power. Like this is all on me. It's my responsibility. If I want a different life, like I'm never going back to the psych hospital, period. And B, like I know that I don't like to use the word courage, but I don't know of any other word maybe you could offer. But like I had the thought, I don't have the courage to actually pull the trigger on that gun. So my only other option is to change my life.
Okay, I'm gonna thank you. And I just want to take a moment here to recognize what an incredible, profound realization that was. And it sounds like that was the start of your badassery.
Yeah.
Putting your hand on heart, going, hey, I'm all there is, and that's okay, because I got this, right? It is within my power. This idea of giving away our power comes up a lot in the work that I do with my clients. Would you mind sharing an example of what that looks like? Because there may be many listeners that are like, I don't get that. What do you mean give away your power? Like, what the hell? Like, what's that translate to in real life? So what are some examples that you can share with us of when you now know that you were giving away your power?
Yeah, like no boundaries,
Okay.
right? Like not having any boundaries, like feeling dating guys that you didn't want to date, but you don't want to hurt their feelings, right? Um, Not saying no when you really want to say no, but you're too afraid of hurting other people's feelings. Letting other people make decisions for your life. Well, you should go to school here, or you should do this there, or like I wanted my first husband pursue his dreams, and I just was like, okay, like we'll go after your dreams and me not like, no, I'm done doing this. Like it's my turn, right? Um, and really just letting other people make decisions for you.
Would you equate then this feeling of powerlessness to a feeling of worthlessness?
I didn't realize that until recently. Because I've always been a very confident woman. Like I am confident, always have been, right? But to have the words around like self-worth, I just never had a lot of self-worth. I just felt there was always this need for me to prove my worth. Like I'll go get rich and famous and I'll show y'all,
I think
right? I'll prove to y'all that I am worth something and I'll prove to you that none of you voted for me to be most likely to succeed. I'll prove to you that I am most successful. And recently I learned like, oh, that all comes from me not seeing my own self-worth, not seeing myself as valuable.
it's one of the biggest challenges that in life, truthfully, because it's not something that we talk about. You know,
Mhm.
I've raised two children, and I'd like to think that I did a really great job with them. But even within that, now that I'm doing the work that I'm doing, I can sit back and go, okay, did I consciously decide to reinforce their worth? Or did I just take it for granted that they would feel loved because I love them in the best way that I could? Because there is a distinction.
Mhm.
And I think that, you know, as women, especially, we need to be very aware of our internal dialogue because that will tell us a lot about our level of worth, you know, where we are on the I guess the ratings of self-worth. And so very, very important distinction. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, so you came out of the psych ward recognizing it's me or nothing, like I got this. And I do want to just refer back to your comment or question about whether it took courage to not pull the trigger. You're right. I'm not sure. Courage may not be the first word that comes to
Mhm.
mind, but all I can say is I'm glad that whatever it was that you needed to make that decision, that you found it.
Yeah.
And maybe it was more a case of you found yourself and that thought does not align with the real you.
Mhm.
So whatever the English word is in this lifetime that you would use to say that, bottom line is, I'm thankful that you found that within you
Thanks.
and that you
Yeah.
recognize that there was a disconnect, that was not meant, that wasn't really you. So
Yeah, I think, if we put words to it, it's like my soul. Like there's a difference between my brain and me and then my soul. And I think it was my soul, like, this isn't our soul's journey. It's not time.
yeah, that's not your role. Okay, good stuff. So what was the first thing that you did? You've come out, you recognize that there's more. What did you do next? I mean, was it a trip to Dairy Queen to celebrate, which is what I would do? Or was it something deeper than that? Why are you
I
laughing?
mean, girl, I am a badass, right? So like I'm extreme. I'm gonna do like extreme things. So I get out. That would have been in January. I'm working in a job that I knew I did not want to be in higher ed. Like I'd already been in higher ed for 9 years. I did not want to be in it. My dream was to go and own a CrossFit gym. That was my dream that I'd been dreaming about for years. So here we are in January. I get out, I go back into higher ed because that was what I was working at, right? We roll into May, and I had a boss that was like, I mean, keep in mind, I'm still like dealing with PTSD, so things are triggering pretty easily. She's like losing her mind, yelling at my only coworker. There's only two of us. She's like yelling at him. I go report her to HR. They're like, okay, we're gonna suspend her. They suspend her for supposedly 6 weeks. She comes back to work after 2 weeks. And I look over there at him and I'm like, dude, just quit. Like, you want a different career? Like, it was 9 o'clock in the morning. I was like, just quit. And like, he takes me up on it and starts like packing his box up. And I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, if he leaves, it's just me here with her. And like that fear, I'm like, okay. And so I start packing my box up. And then we hold point for each other. Like I watch to make sure she's not looking. He goes sneaks his stuff in the car. I go sneak my stuff in the car. I write up the letters of resignation. I march them to HR. And at 10 a.m. in the morning, we drive off. And I
That's
don't know who told her that we quit, but her only two employees quit. So yeah, there's how my first move.
wow. All right. Total badass move. How did you feel driving away?
So empowered. I was like, mic drop moment. Kim is telling the world, I'm not playing by your fucking rules anymore. You tell me to like give 2 weeks notice? No, this is what I need to do for me, and I'm out of here. And I also knew like I'm burning the bridge. Like you can't go get another higher ed job when you quit like that. So I was like,
So,
what am I gonna do? Right? Like I'm single, I'm newly divorced, like I quit this job. Like, what am I gonna do? And I was like, I'm going for it. Like, I'm just gonna write an email, send it to my gym owner at my CrossFit gym, and I'm gonna tell him, like, I have money and I'll buy you out half, partner. And so I did that, and he responded back, like, oh, you can just buy the whole thing. So I did.
okay, I can't even keep up with this. This is amazing. What were you telling yourself as you made these momentous decisions and declarations? And I want to say that, I think my listeners will know this comment because I do talk about it quite a bit, is we need to acknowledge our worth first in order for the world to recognize it. We can't expect the world to treat us as empowered, intelligent, loving, accepting women if we do not believe it of ourselves. So
Mhm.
I totally love that you're doing this, but I'm curious, what was the dialogue? Like, what were what was the chant? If there was a chant, or was it a song?
I think that what motivated me was no one's coming to save me, right? Like I've already hit rock bottom in my life. Like there was no like I have nothing to lose. Like there is no worse that you can get than that in my mind, right? There was nothing to lose at that point. I'm like I have nothing to lose. So I'm gonna live my life for me and I'm gonna do things I want to do and I'm not playing by all their rules anymore because all their rules, this you're asking me what my thoughts were. All their rules is what ended my ass up in the psych hospital and I'm done with their rules. I'm going to live on my roles. And I think that was the chance. I was like, okay. And that was the most proudest I've ever been in my life, driving off away from higher ed. Because it was the first time in my life that I made a decision for me and I did not care about what other people thought or their consequences of it.
So powerful. Of course, all I'm thinking now is, okay, but what did her family think? If that's 30 odd years of being raised
Mhm.
in a group, in a family that thought a certain way. But what was the reaction of those that were loving you and watching this happen?
I had a thought, they already think I'm crazy. I already have a stack of paperwork from a psych hospital that claims that I am. Like, they already think I'm crazy. Like, who cares? Who cares what they think about me at this point? Like, I don't care. How did they did. I think they did think I was like, because I got a divorce and I moved home with my parents. So I was living with my parents. My parents were actually the ones that drove me and dropped me off at the psych hospital.
Mm.
So, like, they already knew, like, this woman is unhinged a little bit, right? And then for me to quit, it's like, this is on par. This is on par for her.
Were they supportive of your badassery, of your taking
Yes.
your power back, or did it? I'm just curious if it created a different energy within the family unit,
Oh, for
because
sure.
yeah. So how did they navigate that, or how did you navigate that?
I, the way I interpret it, I mean, you would have to ask them personally. The way I interpret it, right? Is it, I think that they were a little bit more leery. They were afraid. Like, is this gonna happen again? I think it was probably pretty devastating for them to have to drop their daughter off at a psych hospital for suicide, right? So I think they were a little bit like, we don't we don't know what walking on eggshells. We don't know what to do. We're just gonna try to be as supportive as we possibly can be because this is all so foreign for us and we don't know what to do with it. And their coping skill is kind of like just kind of look the other way.
Oh boy, I think you nailed it on the head for many of us. That is our coping mechanism, is to just ignore. And a lot of us now know that just doesn't work anymore, right? That that
No.
that just does not. Yeah, it doesn't work. Okay, so you bought the gym. Holy hell. And how was that experience? Because I'm guessing that sometimes when we fulfill our dreams or we go after our dreams, well, I can speak from experience. It's not as easy as I thought it was going to be. So I'm curious how it was for you. You wanted the dream, you bought the gym. What next?
Maybe that's a universal experience.
All right, tell us about it.
Yes. So, I mean, gosh, I had been dreaming about that for years. I love CrossFit, right? I had started CrossFit in 2012. I had been coaching for years. This was 20, I bought it on my birthday. I signed the paperwork on my birthday, October 31st of 2016. And I love coaching. I loved programming. I knew zero about being an entrepreneur. I was in higher ed, right? Like zero. And so that part got really difficult. Um, I have a complicated relationship with my family. And I was living at home with them, and then I was running this business and having to learn sales and marketing. And I didn't have rejection resilience at that point, right? Like I hadn't found coaching yet. So my mindset was starting to shift, but we were definitely not there yet. So every time an athlete would quit, it felt like they were breaking up with me, and it was devastating. So I was breaking even in the gym. And then if people would leave, I felt like I was being broke up with. And like that was just so hard. It was just so hard. It was sucking the fun out of CrossFit from me.
Okay. Interesting term. I think you said rejection resilience.
Mhm.
I've actually never heard it phrased that way before, but an important component of a growth mindset is developing resilience to rejection, because in fact we don't necessarily look at it as rejection. It's like it's not rejection of me, it's their choice, but what's the opportunity? So how long did it take you to really recognize that these quote rejections or whatever they ended, if they quit the gym or didn't renew their membership, how long did it take you to recognize it was a learning opportunity?
I would say 6 years later, I didn't learn it in the gym. I ran it for 2 years and I couldn't handle it anymore. So I sold it because I didn't learn it. It was just so personal. So yeah, so I sold the gym and then I took the journey of like, I'm tired of living paycheck to paycheck. I just want to learn how to be successful. I obviously don't know how to be successful. I need to learn how to be successful. So I started reading a book, and that book, she said, if you want to be successful, you get a coach. I had never heard of that. Googled it, found the Life Coach School podcast, listened to 2 episodes, and then signed up and studied underneath her for 2 years. And then I launched my coaching practice October 2020. And I think really maybe 21, 22 is really where the skill, like developing the rejection resilience and not taking it personally, started to click.
Thank you for your honesty about that, because I think there's a real, and I fell victim to it as well. Because like you, I am a very confident woman. I've been very blessed to have a great life. And it wasn't until I discovered entrepreneurship and I began to study it and build my business. I took a course to be certified as a mastery method coach. It wasn't until that experience that I realized that I too desperately needed a coach. And I too
Mhm.
had money stories, limiting beliefs, a narrative that just wasn't working for me and came from, like, not from my imagination, because these experiences happened, but they came from a very young mind making assumptions about things that just weren't correct. And
Mhm.
I just kept them. I just kept thinking. So it's not an overnight, the minute you decide to go on a personal journey, you figure this shit out. That's just not true. And if anybody tells you otherwise, I would question that. That's just my
Yeah.
personal,
Yeah.
right?
They're trying to sell you on something.
Yeah, but I mean, the human journey is fascinating. And especially when we decide to take control back and live as a badass, right? That's what we're here talking about. But that doesn't mean that it's not without its challenges. And we don't often, I don't think anyway, learn the lessons the first time around. What I can say from experience, and she's laughing, so I think she knows where I'm going with this, is if you don't learn it, the universe is going to give you another opportunity.
For
I
sure.
believe I have a bunch of spirit guides sitting back going, oh my God, Mahara didn't get it. Okay, what are we going to do now? Okay, let's put this in her path. And oh my God, she missed the sign again. What is it going to take for that girl to figure out this lesson? So I feel that's how the universe works. So I think it's important that we understand that just because we want to feel better, we want to feel badass or empowered, doesn't mean that we don't have to actually do the work and learn the lessons.
Oh, yeah. 100%. Like you got to do the work.
You got to do the work. Sad but true. Well, not really sad, because there's growth and beauty and you know the human experience in doing the work. Okay, so you sold the gym.
Mm-hmm.
and you got into coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Where you are today, what's the biggest lesson that you've learned about yourself?
I'm learning to accept myself. I have fought against who I actually am for a very long time because the words that were used to describe me were aggressive, and uh, intense. That's usually the word, like, oh, you're very intense. And I use those as like something bad, right? And like seeing that, no, like I am relentless. I am. And when I want something, I am relentless. And my intensity is I am intensely caring and aggressively helpful. And like embracing those things about myself, because that's what's going to make me great. Like that, or when I say that, that's going to create the success that I desire. How about that?
Yeah. No, and powerful words and a nice distinction between the two. And I've often heard that what we perceive as being our weakest in actual fact is ours, can be our super weapon, our superpower, if we can sort of switch the lens on which we view that character. Because often when people will say things about us, it's from their point of view.
Yeah.
And that point of view, you just don't know unless you're in their shoes or unless you get real clarity on it. And most of us don't bother to do that. We hear what people say, we interpret it, and away we go. How many of us stop and say, excuse me, I'm sorry, what did you mean by that? Because what I
Yeah.
heard was, you thought I sucked. But I'm just
Yeah.
curious, is that really what you meant to say? I've actually tried that a couple times with my husband, and he's like, that's not what I said. What is wrong with you? And I'm like, it's okay. I'm on a journey. I'm figuring this shit out.
Right.
Right? Just checking. But
Yeah.
yeah, you said something earlier that I want to go back to and hope I can remember exactly what you said. It was around this idea that we make everything about ourselves in
Mm.
life. And one of the things that I'm learning on my personal journey, and some of my clients are as well, is life is never about you until you make it about you.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard one, I think, for me to sort of wrap my head around, because it's like, well, of course it's about me. If my feelings get hurt, then of course it's fucking about me. And
Right.
it's like, no, actually, you're making it about you and your feelings get hurt.
Yeah.
You've got to learn, I need to learn to separate. So I'm wondering if that's a lesson that you've experienced as well.
You know, when I owned the gym, people would tell me like mentors or whatever, like, oh, it's business, it's not personal. You got to stop taking these things personally. And like, I'm a smart woman. I intellectually understood the words that they were saying, right? I just didn't know what that meant in action, like what that felt like, right? And to be honest with you, like I've heard it many a time until I started diving into my coaching business, couldn't go any further. And I figured out why is because I had to finally look at my trauma. Even though I had therapy all these years, right? Like I had to like look at it and like see the behavior patterns that it had created in me. And when I finally looked at that trauma and did the work for that and could see that it was like this little Kim in here that was like had these wounds. And so people that said and did things, it was coming through those wounds, right? It was hitting on those wounds. And that's why everything felt so personal. And so when I did the work to like really like heal that, then I had access to not taking things personal because I was more in control of my nervous system at that point. I was more aware of like, oh, that's hitting on that wound, and this is coming from their wounds, and I know how to take care of this wound now.
So good. You used the word trigger earlier. And I think what you're talking about right now is the recognition that things trigger in us
Mm-hmm.
wounds that haven't been healed.
Yeah.
And many of my listeners will recognize this idea of something triggers you. You may not use that word, but when someone says something and all of a sudden your gut clenches and you just get really pissed off. That's an
Yep.
example of being triggered. And it's a beautiful opportunity for growth, because when we feel ourselves with that clutch or whatever our instinctive reaction is, instead of reacting like we've had in the past, either verbally or with our emotions or our thought patterns, it's a chance to go, okay, this is interesting. Okay, this is interesting. How come that behavior with that person is making me feel this way? And
Mhm.
chances are there's a story behind that, and you may have to go
Oh yeah.
layers deep. And what I often say to clients, and I, of course, say to myself regularly, because I'm really on this journey too, is okay, what's next? What's underneath that?
Mhm.
What's underneath that? And when you get to the point where there's nothing else underneath it, then you go, okay, now let's talk about that.
Mhm.
That's interesting. And where I'm at right now is when I get to the bottom, I usually just forgive myself. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, all right. I was just a little girl when I made that assumption, or that's just not the truth anymore. It's not my truth. I don't need it. And I kind of forgive myself and move on. But it's interesting that we are given our body knows, we are given signals. And I think one way that we can really sit in our badassery is to listen to the signals. I'm not saying you need to understand them right away. You may need help. That's what both you and I are here doing now in our careers. But recognize the signals, and get curious about it.
Yeah, I love that. Because I've always saw myself as a badass because I'm tough, right? And like I can take a beating and keep going. Um, and part of that identity was I can just like keep moving forward. And I remember coach after coach after coach would tell me like you need to learn how to be compassionate to yourself. And I reached a point, I'm like, if one more fucking coach tells me to be compassionate to myself, I swear to God, I'm going to burn this computer down. Um, because it just was not part of that badass identity that I had, right? Like compassion wasn't compatible with that. Like it was more like I'm gonna go burn the house down type energy, right? I will have vengeance. Um, and when I learned self-compassion and like how to have self-compassion, I feel like I'm more of a badass now because of that weapon of self-compassion, because that self-compassion becomes compassion for the other humans as well.
What a great call out. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that. When I first decided, people know the story, when I first decided to use the word badass in my coaching as part of my copy, and then I created the podcast, The Art of Badassery, my mother-in-law, she was beside herself in a good way. She's like, what the hell are you calling that? I'm like, the art of badassery. She's like, I don't want to be a badass. Like, what are you talking about? We had a great conversation around generational ideology and language. And from her generation, being a badass was bad. You
Mhm.
were aggressive. You took no BS. You may be violent. It was this picture of some big muscle guy on a Harley, right? And I just found it really interesting because I've got young women who for children, and my kids are in their 20s. And this generation, the word badass has a completely different connotation. And that's the one I was leaning in towards. But to your point, I can see that you had this idea that being badass meant tough, get through anything, keep going, not
Mhm.
going to knock me down. But
Mhm.
the truth, I believe, and so do you now, is we are strongest when we are aligned with our true selves.
Mhm.
And our higher self, our soul, is very forgiving
Mhm.
because we know it all. We understand the journey. We signed up for this journey. So it's an interesting juxtaposition, shall we say, of using the term badass, but actually being very soft and empathetic and forgiving on the inside
Yeah,
at the same time. Cool.
yeah, yeah.
All right. So why else are you badass? Now that you've a few years have gone by, you've grown in your personal development, you perhaps have a slightly different understanding of the term badass. What else is going on in your world that you can now say, okay, yeah, no, I am supposed to be on that show.
That's a great question. Um, I just feel like I am a happier human. I I never have been a human that felt at peace. And I'm calm. I feel at peace, right? I'm happier. I'm not this up and down, which I used to be. I don't look for a savior to save me anymore. Like I know that I'm the creator of my story. Like I may be co-creating with the universe, but I'm ultimately the captain of this ship, right? And I just have so much more compassion and empathy for humanity. Because for a lot of my life, I I love animals and I hated the humans. And to be able to be in a place of just to have so much compassion for both both forms of the mammals, the
Yeah.
humans and the animals. Um, and to be so like, I feel like I'm actually a good human, right? Like, I'm not one of those humans that like fight over the internet on politics or only has to be my way. And like, my leadership style is very, instead of this hierarchy, it's very, I know I'm a leader and I will lead, but I lead by surrounding myself with experts and I empower them to use their expertise. I don't need to be the hierarchy expert. So I feel like that's what makes me a badass now is just this ability to be an authentically good human for no ulterior reason.
I feel like I want one of these horns to blow when someone said something really amazing. Thank you for that. And I would absolutely agree. What struck me the most, though, in the last few minutes of your sharing was this recognition that it is badass to be happy.
Yeah.
Joy, I think, is underpins everything in our lives. And when we can surrender to being joyful and happy and a good human, yeah, that's totally badass because it's not about what you do for a living. It's not about how much money you make, how good you look, how skinny you are, any of that stuff. I believe that fulfillment in life is about being happy and being part of the human experience the best way that you can be. And what I found is as I release my need to be, quote, successful with X amount of clients and X amount of money in the bank, I am becoming happier. And then guess what? The money in the bank is changing, the clients are growing. So it's interesting when you focus on just being rather than doing,
Mhm.
life kind of gets easier. And that I'm still working on that. Believe me, I've been working, plugging away at my business for 3 years, nonstop, 24/7. And I am finally going, you know what? I just want to take a breath and really connect with me and have faith and surrender to the journey that it's all going to work out. Because now I really, really understand that I'm connected to my purpose.
Yeah.
Before, I didn't realize that's what I was. I just thought, oh, it'd be cool to do that. I want to do that. Now I recognize, thankfully, that what I wanted to do 3 years ago actually is my purpose. And I'm feeling more relaxed in that. Would you say that's where you are as well on your journey, feeling very relaxed in your purpose and the efforts and the experience that you bring to the world?
Yeah, for sure. I think it sounds like I started my coaching business October 2020. So we started around the same time. And like our industry, there's a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of mentors that are making millions and millions of dollars a year, right? So that carrot is there, right? And like not only like coaching changed my life, and I felt like the model was like the secret to the universe that I had to share, right? I had to be the canary in the coal mine, right? But also is like that appeal, like this could be my opportunity to show all of them,
Mm.
right? To get rich and famous, to show all these people that underdogged me, like, see, and then, and I was like the first 2 years, like I created financially a full-time business that could support me financially full-time, right? Which is, I guess that's impressive. Um, and then I got lost in that, right? And it was like it all became about, well, I have to hit 100K and I have to hit this, right? These are the markers in my industry. And I got COVID long haulers. So the combination of that drive and having struggling with long COVID, year three of my business totally imploded. Absolutely. I had all these clients, had a full roster of clients. I graduated all of them out, had none in the pipeline, didn't have any in the pipeline. My revenue cut absolutely in half. I ended the year with zero clients, zero revenue for over 6 months. And what it taught me was you're going to be okay. Fortunately, I have a husband that can financially take care of us, right? So I get that privilege, right? But it was the biggest lesson for me. It was like, yeah, the worst thing that could happen in business just happened to you, and you're still here, and it's totally fine. And your worthiness and your significance in this world still matters, even though things have not gone how you thought they were going to go, right? Um, and I think that's what brought me to the point now of like, I'm just not attached to it anymore, right? Like,
So
I get to run my business from a very clean place of I want to help. I have lots of knowledge to help, and I don't need clients and I don't need the money to tell me that I'm worthy and enough anymore.
I definitely am going to go out and get one. I don't know, some sort of a noisemaker, because what you've just shared is powerful. And I think I'm almost there. Full disclosure, it's not that my business has ever taken off to where I thought it was. I was so naive. Oh my God, I laugh at it now. I just kind of went into it going, well, of course, I know my stuff. I'm really good at what I do, and I'm just going to put myself out there. And I did everything that I was told, and it just didn't transpire. And I kept saying, well, next month it will. Next month it's going to, the belief was incredibly strong. But what I needed to have happen was this recognition that my worth is not dependent on my bank account. My ability shines regardless of whether I am charging for it or I even execute on it. Whether I have a client or not, I'm still worthy of my dreams. And that has been, I think, one of the biggest and most toughest lessons for me. Because, like all of us, we live in a society that says success matters. No, no, no. Marry a good man and he'll take care of you. Luckily, I have married a great man, but we've always been equals, which I've been very fortunate. But there's still this carrot of, oh, yeah, you want to make six figures, you know. And I laugh because I would answer these calls to actions that said, if you're not making 10K in your first 3 months, you need me. And I'm like, 10K in my first three, like, huh? So very honest discussion that we're having, Kim, and I really appreciate it because so many of my peers and I are still stuck in that misunderstanding that this is how we need to be considered successful.
It's a misunderstanding, but it is also like in our industry, it is very much capitalized on.
Oh, absolutely. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. So when that happened at the end of last year, and you recognize that, you know what, I'm actually okay. Did it change anything to the structure of your business, for example?
Oh yeah, I burned it down.
You burn. Okay, hello. Here's another story, another example of badassery. Recognize when something's not working and give yourself permission to burn it down and start again. Okay, talk to us about that.
Yeah, my soul's really good at burning shit down.
You've had
Yeah,
experience, that's why. You're not
yeah.
anymore.
I mean, yeah, so I go into, it's October last year. Uh, I'm talking with my nutrition and fitness coach, and I've had COVID for the third time now, and I'm like 3 weeks struggling with it. And she looks at me and she goes, how'd you take off for this? And I was like, well, I quit working out. She's like, do you quit work? I was like, no. She's like, you think this is what's drawing this out for you? And I was like, oh, um, I don't have any clients. Like, what am I doing? I was like, fine, I'm gonna take a sabbatical. So I took a sabbatical October, November, December of last year. Just like, I'm not gonna work, I'm not gonna do anything, right? Like, we're done. And then I roll into January and I'm like, that's like during that time, I just realized, like, what am I doing? Like, I've created a job for myself where I'm just working on stuff that it's not even moving the needle. I don't need clients. I don't need the money, right? Like, I I'm I'm wasting my health away. Like, my health is at the expense of this stuff. Like, what am I doing? And I was like, all right, I'm only going to take clients when I want to, and I'm only taking ideal clients. I'm no longer just taking clients to take clients, right? Um, so I got really strict around like who I will take and who I won't take. and then how I was going to do my coaching business. And I took a break away from the coaching industry. I didn't have a coach. I didn't do any of the programs. And I allowed my head to have my own voice for once. And so it was like, what do you want? How do you want to build this coaching business? What do you want to focus on? And who do you want to help? And we're no longer going to sacrifice ourselves to help other people so we can have some money in the bank account and so we can feel like we're successful. We're just not going to do that anymore.
Total badassery. And I do think that takes courage. I'm not sure if you would use the word courage, but as I listen to you and as I put myself in your shoes, because I'm kind of there myself, I'm going to use the word courage because it feels a little scary to let go. It feels a little scary to say, I don't actually have the answers right now. And that's okay. I'm just going to sit with it, pray, listen to myself. I loved what you said about listening, allowing your mind to talk your voice, not somebody else's. That was really powerful, by the way. I feel like it should be a t-shirt. I'm not quite sure what to say. So good. So from January to now, what's the biggest change that you've seen, not only in your mindset, you are a mental performance coach after all, but also in the reality of your business?
Yeah. I don't make myself do like I don't make myself go post every day, right? Um, and I only like I just launched a 30-day challenge, a 30-day biohacking challenge, right? And so the rules in the coaching industry, maybe they're different otherwise, I don't know. The rules in the coaching industry is like you talk about your niche and you don't talk about anything else. You just talk about your niche, right? Well, I'm a mental performance coach that focuses on neuroscience, mindset, right? And biohacking the brain via hormones and neurotransmitters. That's my niche, right? I work with women only. So I drew the line in the sand of that. Um, but I love biohacking. I'm trying to biohack my own body to heal it from long COVID, right? So the rules would tell me not to talk about that stuff. Again, I said, fuck that. I want to talk about biohacking. So I launched this 30-day biohacking challenge where I just invited people to come do it with me. We're cold plunging, we're doing all sorts of like biohacking things to optimize health, right? Again, the industry would tell me not to do that. I did it. I'm like, I have 28 women in here, right? And it's like, this is the first successful launch I've ever had in my coaching business. Because usually I'll have like two or three, five people, and like I have 28 women paid to be in this container, right? So it's just me building this. Like, I have a passion for biohacking, I have a passion for human physiology. I also have a passion for neuroscience and mental health and like optimizing women's potential, helping them step into their full potential. And I want to do both. And I want to talk about both. And I'm going to figure out how to do it and make my business thrive that way.
Shivers. I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited.
Thanks. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. It did answer my question. So, all right, what are some of the key things that you would share with our audience today on feeling badass on a regular basis, recognizing that many of us, if not all of us, have experienced some or all of what you've experienced?
Um, Advice. You're going to feel better at the end of the day when you make decisions for yourself, right? When you have your own back. And when I say have your own back, what I mean is like you don't trash talk yourself and you don't throw yourself under the bus, right? And we don't people please people anymore. People pleasing, and from my world, is manipulation. I'm just trying to manipulate the other humans to feel something about me or think something about me. And I don't want to do that. I don't like to be manipulated and I don't want to manipulate other people. So I access courage to be honest and to be direct and to know, have compassion for myself that I made the best decisions I could with what I knew. And if I'd have known better, I would have done better, but I didn't. And so I'm not going to throw myself under the bus.
So good. Oh my goodness. Thank you for that. I really appreciated the introduction of courage there. And I have never heard anybody draw a parallel between people pleasing and manipulation. You and I are going to have to talk about that some more on another podcast because my mind just lit up with all the possibilities of where we could go with that statement. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah.
Kim, thank you for this chat. I've just loved hearing your story. As an entrepreneur, I really relate to a lot of what you've shared. And thank you. It's kind of enriched me from
Oh,
not
good.
a podcaster, but as a fellow coach and entrepreneur that's trying to figure out her way in this world. Folks,
Yeah.
I hope you've enjoyed the show. Check out the show notes because all of Kimberly's contact information will be there and then some. My name is Mahara. This has been the Art of Badassery. Tune in next week when I chat with some other amazing woman about her badass experience. Take care, everyone. Thanks, Kim.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another badass episode. Your support means the world to me. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, don't forget to like, share, and rate the episode on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback keeps the badassery flowing. And hey, if you're ready to unleash your inner badass and conquer whatever life throws your way, why not book a complimentary badass breakthrough session? Just click the link in the show notes to schedule your session, and let's kick some serious butt together. Until next time, stay fearless, stay fabulous, and of course, stay badass. This is Mahara signing off.